Hi everyone, this is Andrew. This is my second algebra lesson, and today we'll be solving quadratics again, but this time we'll be using a method called completing the square. Now this can be used to solve more advanced problems, and it's good for when there's fractions and square roots and the like, and if we can't use the other methods that we learned. Okay, here's a fairly trivial question. Now, we could solve this using that first technique we used, which is two numbers that multiply together to give 21 and add to give 10. So 3 and 7 spring to mind, don't they? So 3 times 7 is 21, 3 plus 7 equals 10. But for this lesson, we're just going to learn completing the square, we're going to start with a simple problem, okay? Right. So the first step is to rewrite the a and the b term, so x squared plus 10x. And the goal here is to turn this, so to turn x squared plus 10x into this form. It'll be x plus something squared. We want to get all of that into that term. Now, in order to do that, we have to add a number to here, don't we? We have to add something here. And what is that something? Well, to work that out, we find half of the b term. So we find half of b, which is 5. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. And we square it. So 5 squared is 25. Okay. Go ahead and add that. Now we have to keep the 21. We have to keep the 21 from above. And because we added 25, so we've just chosen this arbitrary value. Remember, it's half of b squared. Because we've added that to the left-hand side, we have to add it to the right-hand side, don't we? Whatever you do to one side of an algebra equation, you must do to the other side, right? Okay, so just bear with me. Now all of that there, we can put that into this form. How, you may ask? Well, we just put an x plus half the b, which is 5. Now if you go ahead and expand that, x plus 5 squared, so x plus 5 times x plus 5, you'll notice that it turns into x squared plus 10x plus 25. So this value here, that's why we put that value there, so that we could get it into this form. Okay? So x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to x plus 5 squared. Okay, continue our equation. So we have to put the 21 and we have to put the 25. Okay. Move the 21 to the right hand side, so we'll get x plus 5 squared will equal 25 minus 21, which equals 4. Remove the squared, we do that by square rooting, so x plus 5 equals the, remember when we square root something we should always put plus or minus, so it'd be plus or minus the square root of 4. Right, so x plus 5 will equal plus or minus 2. Can you see why? Because minus 2 times minus 2 is 4, and positive 2 times positive 2 is 4, so that's why we have the plus or minus there. Okay, we can go ahead and solve that. I'll just solve it over to the right here. So x plus 5, x will equal minus 2 minus 5, which equals minus 7, or x will equal positive 2 minus 5, which equals minus 3, right? So there's our answer. X equals minus 7 or x equals minus 3. Let's try another one. x squared, again a fairly trivial example, but will get harder, it'll get harder soon, minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Okay, so again we could solve this one by finding two values that multiply to get minus 8 and add to get minus 2. You can try that if you like. But let's do it by the method of completing the square. X squared minus 2x, so we write our a and b terms. Now we have to add something that is half of b. So half of b, the square of half of b. So half of b is minus 1. Minus 1 squared is 1, isn't it? Plus 1. We have to keep everything else that we have there. Because we added 1, we have to add 1 to the other side as well. What does that become? It'll become something like this, won't it? So x minus half of b, right? 1. So x minus half of b. So x minus 1 squared. If you expand that, you'll get x squared minus 2x plus 1, which is correct. Minus 8 equals 1. Let's go ahead and put the minus 8 on the other side. So that'll be plus 8, won't it? So 1 plus 8 is 9. 9. Okay, find the square root of both sides. So x minus 1 will equal plus or minus the square root of 3, sorry, the square root of 9, which is 3. So x minus 1 will equal plus or minus 3. Let's go up to the side here. X will equal minus 3 plus 1, which is minus 2. Or x will equal positive 3 plus 1, which equals 4. So x will equal minus 2 or 4, and if you go ahead and put them back into the original equation, you'll find that they're accurate. Let's just do minus 2. So minus 2 squared is 4, minus 2 times minus 2, so that's plus 4. Yep, so it'll be 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 minus 8 equals 0. Good. Okay, next problem. 4x squared plus 8x plus 3 equals 0. Okay, when completing the square, we can't, well you can, but to make it simpler for ourselves, we should divide everything so that there is only a 1 in front of the x squared. So basically we'll divide everything by 4. So let's go ahead and do that. So it'll be x squared plus 2x, so 8 divided by 4, plus 3 divided by 4. We'll keep it as a fraction. You should try never to round, not that 3/4 would round, but if you had, say, 3 divided by 67, try to keep it as a fraction, because then it's exact. You don't want to go to 0.087213, and because you'll lose accuracy then. So x squared plus 2x plus 3/4 equals 0. Now we can do the method completing the square. X squared plus 2x plus, remember, half of b squared. So half of b is 1. 1 squared is 1. We have to keep the 3/4. And because we added 1 here, we have to add 1 to the right-hand side. We can put all of that into this form. X plus half of b, right? So x plus 1 squared. If you try to expand that, x plus 1 times x plus 1, you'll get x squared plus 2x plus 1. Okay, plus 3/4 equals 1. Let's take the 3/4 over there. So 1 minus 3/4 equals 1/4, right? Okay, x plus 1, find the square root of both sides, plus or minus the square root of half. What's the square root of a half? Sorry, of a quarter. What's the square root of a 1/4? the answer is 1/2, isn't it? If you multiply half times a half, you'll get 1/4. Half of a half is 1/4. Right, so let's solve it. So x will equal half minus 1, which equals minus 1/2, or x will equal minus a half minus 1. Minus a half minus 1, which equals minus 1/2, or minus 3 on 2. Okay? So x equals minus a half or minus 3 on 2. And you could go ahead and check that if you wanted to. Remember, we can almost check everything. We can always check our answer in algebra. Well, almost always. Great. Next problem. X squared plus 4x minus 3. Now this is our first problem where we can't use our other techniques to solve this. For example, can you think of two numbers that multiply together to get minus 3, but add to get positive 4? Not really. You'd be sitting there a while. Right, the only one I can think of is 3 and 1. Now, no matter how I put it, minus 3 times 1 is going to be, if you add them together, you're going to get minus 2, or positive 3 and minus 1. Yeah, you're not going to get 4 anyway. So in this case, completing the square is the ideal method. Let's go ahead and solve it. Write the a term plus the b term plus half the b term squared. So half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. We have to add it to both sides, remember. Put that into this form. So it'll be x plus 2. X plus 2 squared. So x plus 2 times x plus 2 will be x squared plus 4x plus 4. Great. Minus the 3 equals 4. So x plus 2 squared will equal 4 plus 3, which is 7. Okay. And then find the square root of both sides. X plus 2 will equal plus or minus the square root of 7. So as you can see, like the square root of 7 is a hard thing to work out exactly. So let's just keep it as root 7. X plus 2 equals root 7. So we can go ahead and solve that now. So x will equal positive root 7 minus 2, or x will equal minus root 7 minus 2. That's our answer. You could, if you wanted to, put it into a calculator and get some decimal form, but for a maths exam that would be fine. That's the correct answer, exactly. Right. Now, let's do one last one. 2x squared plus 10x equals 0. Right. So the first step, remember? So there is no c term, or c equals 0 in this case. So it's 10x squared plus 10x plus nothing equals 0. First we have to divide everything by 2. We want to get rid of this, don't we? So divide everything by 2. X squared plus 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5x. 0 divided by anything is 0. Well, 0 divided by 2 anyway is 0. X squared plus 5x equals 0. X squared plus 5x plus what? What do we have to put plus here to get it to be a perfect square? Well, half of b is 2.5. So half of b is 2.5. We'll put it as a fraction. squared, right? So it's half of b squared equals, you have to add it to both sides, half of b squared. Let's work out what that is. 5 on 2 times 5 on 2. What is that? Well, just remembering, so 5 on 2 times 5 on 2 is just 25. You know, top by top, bottom by bottom. 25 on 4. Okay? Let's put it into this form. So it'll be x plus 5 on 2, which is just half of b, equals 25 on 4. Remembering all of this was what we turned into this one. So there is no other number here. So x plus 5 on 2 squared equals 25 over 4. Let's find the square root. X plus 5 over 2. X plus 5 over 2 equals the plus or minus the square root of 25 over 4. How do we find the square root of 25 over 4? Well, that's equivalent to the square root of 25 divided by the square root of 4, which equals 5 divided by 2. Right? So finally, what do we get? We get x plus 5 over 2 will equal plus or minus 5 over 2. X will equal positive 5 over 2 minus 5 over 2, which equals 0, doesn't it? Or x will equal negative 5 over 2 minus 5 over 2, which equals minus 10 over 2, which equals minus 5. So the two answers are 0 and minus 5. Now let's go back to the original equation. So 0 and minus 5 are our answers. So it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense that 0 would work here, doesn't it? So there's only x, there's an x here, there's an x here. So 2 times 0 squared is 0, plus 10 times 0 equals 0. So we could have just looked at that equation and gone, yes, one of the values of x is 0. We didn't have to actually work anything out there. We could have just stated that. But the other value, 5, could we have solved that a different way? Let's try it. Right, so I'll rewrite the equation. 2x squared plus 10x equals 0. Well, we could have put the 10x on the other side, couldn't we? So we could have gone 2x squared equals minus 10x. Yeah? And then what? Well, from there we could see that x equals 0, couldn't we? X could be equal to 0 for that to be true. Well, we could divide both sides by 2. So x squared will equal minus 5x. Then what could we do? We could divide both sides by x. So x squared divided by x is x. Minus 5x divided by x is minus 5. So in the end, we actually didn't really need to do completing the square to get that answer. But it's always good to have more tools in your maths toolbox so that we can solve things in various ways. Yeah. So yes, we did use complete the square in that case, and it worked out fine. Or you could have just done it this way, just using standard algebra because there was no C term. Keep that in mind. When there's no C term, you can always solve it this way. Thanks.